This land on which we gather today and the river that runs through it is located at the meeting place of Treaty 7 and Treaty 6 regions.
This area is the traditional territory of the Niitsitapi Blackfoot, including the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai peoples, the Tsuut'ina, Stoney Nakoda, Cree Nehiyawin, Saulteaux, and Métis peoples. We strive
in the spirit of the treaties to keep this a place of friendship, trust, and promise.
It's a work in progress.
We acknowledge that promise and welcome you to this place and our chance to share in peace and respect for our future together.
Yum, this soup is tasty and sweet, creamy and good, just the way I like it.
Say, Charlie Cheese, what's that you're doing?
What does it look like, Chucky Chalk? Hungry, so I'm eating, sheesh.
Ah, cereal, an excellent start to a day, just as long as there's no added sugar, that is.
It's soup, silly, and you can stop your preaching about the evils of sugar and let me enjoy my juicy slurpy soup. Yum!
I beg to differ, Charlie Cheese. That is most definitely cereal. Golden toasted flakes of grain floating in what looks to be milk. Definitely cereal.
Back off, will ya? You're getting chalk flakes in my cornflakes. And you are nuts. You know that? Solid stuff floating in liquid stuff. Soup. Everyone knows that. Now let me enjoy my soup in peace and quiet.
You know I can't do that, Charlie Cheese. I need to be precise and clear in my communication. How do you think are we to remain civilized beings if we can't agree on what to call things? You know me, I'll not be able to enjoy the rest of my day if we don't resolve this perplexing conundrum.
Yeah? While you're resolving your conundrum or whatever it is, I'll be resolving my yummy soup. Resolving it right into my tummy.
You may be resolving it, as you say, but what you're resolving is cereal, and most definitely not soup.
Oh, but it is soup.
Poor, diluted cheese is cereal, and you know it.
Ah, my dry and dusty chum, that's where you're wrong. It's soup, and soup by any other name
would be called cereal, and never shall the twains meet.
Choo-choo twains, you mean?
Very funny. I mean that soup is soup and cereal is cereal, and never shall the two intersect.
Twains, intersect. It's still soup no matter how fancy you get with your words.
Cereal.
Soup.
Cereal.
Soup.
Cereal. Soup. Cereal. Cereal. Whoa, cereal. Whoa, cereal. It's cereal. You know it's cereal. Yeah, cereal. Don't
Hey. What are you two doing?
Chalk says soup is cereal.
And Cheese says it's soup. Can you imagine anything more ridiculous?
Okay. I understand that you are both on the opposite side of this issue, but what if we were find a way to work through this together? Would you be up for it?
Maybe.
Give it a try, I guess.
That's the spirit, you two. Have you ever run into someone who you were convinced had the wrong idea, and you thought, if only I could speak with them, if only I could convince them that their idea was on the rails, or off the rails, pardon me. Just like this argument between Chucky and Chalk about soup and cereal. It's like driving everybody crazy.
Do you think our argument is silly?
Well, I'm sorry, I apologize. I really think it's an important thing. If it's important to you, then it's important, period. And Oh boy, I'm sorry.
Not such a great start, eh, moderator?
Yeah, well, okay, like not such a great start. I'll try better from now on.
Yes, please do.
My name is Matt Gould, and I am the moderator of Hear and Be Heard, 10 community conversations, co-hosted by the Red Deer Public Library and the Red Deer Puppetry Collective.
Yay!
And each month, my friends, Chalky Cheese and Charlie somebody, Chuck and Cheese, are going to join me, and we're going to have a little show that starts it off, and then we're going to move into a conversation.
Sesame Street for adults, like.
Exactly. And today's conversation is called The Not So Great Divide. We're going to have a discussion and see if we can find a way to communicate and go through things where you have opposite opinions and find a way to work through it.
If you can't say anything nice,
Even just to find a tiny little piece of common ground, the teeny tiniest little sliver, that would be even a good start. And just to let you know that tonight's conversation is not about hot button issues, but rather we're finding a way to discuss hot button issues calmly and with respect. So how does that sound?
Soup.
cereal.
Pardon me?
Oh, right, sure.
Happy to assist.
And we're going to get some help from Ms. Megan Phelps Roper, who was raised in the Westboro Baptist Church in the United States. Now, for those of you who don't know anything about it, the Westboro Baptist Church was a church that had very, very extreme ideas, and they would go and picket around the country funerals of gay people, for example, who had died of AIDS.
Meanies?
That's beyond the pale.
And even soldiers. And some of these pickets might say, God hates fags. Or they might say, gays deserve death.
How rude.
And Megan's grandfather was the founder of the church. And so she started picketing at the age of 5. And when she grew up, she began to get involved in social media.
Facebook.
MySpace, anyone? Anyone?
And she began to put the ideas of the church out there. And maybe we aren't surprised, but she got some very hostile responses.
Duh.
Now, the story would have ended there, but some of the people that were twittering with her had meaningful conversations and they engaged her. And these conversations moved beyond general like mudslinging. So eventually she left the church, she abandoned those ideas, and she embraced new, open, and inclusive ideas. Now, she also, through these conversations with absolute and total strangers, came up with some ideas in the way we can bridge the divide. And tonight, with the help of my 2 friends, we're going to work through those. And then I'm going to introduce you to a series of citizens from Red Deer who are passionate and excited to join in the conversation. And then we'll take it from there. How does that sound?
Pronto.
Huh?
Means ready in Italian.
Oh, okay.
We're almost ready, except for the fact that these violent weapons are...
Oh, no.
Thank you very much. That wasn't so bad, was it, you two? And I know that it's very hard when you hold an idea close to your heart to begin to change your mind about something. So I am so proud of you two for giving it a try.
My pleasure.
Whatever.
And now I am going to suggest that Chucky Chalk takes us and gives us that first idea that Megan had.
Thank you. I'd be happy to. First of all, I hope you have a pencil and paper handy because there is going to be a test at the end of this.
What? No one told me anything about a test. Shh.
Just teasing, Charlie Cheese. There'll be no test. But some of you might want to make a few notes as we go along. The first idea we want to present to you is don't assume bad intent. Remember that the folks you are disagreeing with are people, just like you, with a lifetime of experience that has led them to these beliefs. But Remembering that the other person's intent is not necessarily bad is a good place to start.
Find some common ground, like.
Exactly.
Thank you, Chucky Chalk, for starting us off. High five, or high little tiny finger, eh? Okay, yeah.
Yes.
And Charlie, why don't you go to the next one for us? Give us number 2.
Okay, it's a simple one and a hard one too. Ask questions. Ask them why they believe what they believe and how did they even start to think like that. It shows them that you are listening and that you want to find out more. Maybe they'll even ask you some questions too, and then you can start to work some junk out.
That's a good idea, working the junk out, eh, Charlie? Thank you very much. Chucky, why don't you take over for number 3?
Number 3 is a very challenging one, and this idea will take practice. Stay calm. The first thing many of us do when confronted with an idea that is opposite to our own is to get upset and angry. Maybe clench our fists and furrow our brows and turn red.
Like me, but I'm always red and I can't furrow my brow because I'm made of plaster and cardboard. I suppose I could hold a little maybe, but then I'd crack.
Thanks for that meandering observation, Charlie Cheese. And so remember, see if you can find a way to stay calm. Count to 10.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hey, Chalk, it works. I'm cool as a cucumber.
I like a calm, Charlie. I do. So remember, practice any technique that will allow you to stay calm.
I'm calm like a pond in the forest. First thing in the morning before a deer stops by to slurp it up and make ripples. That calm.
That's very calm, Charlie Cheese. Oh. And now in this calm state, why don't you introduce the last and 4th idea?
Make the argument. Say why you believe what you do. Tell the other person what your story is. Don't assume they know where you're coming from. So give them the chance to hear your story. And you never know. Maybe each of you will say, huh, good point. And I never thought of that. Or, boy, that's a great sweater. Where'd you get it? You know, stuff like that.
Thanks, Charlie Cheese. And you are looking fantastic tonight. I love that bow tie.
Thanks. Too kind. But you know what?
What?
All of this talk has made me powerful hungry, and I didn't get to finish my meal before, so what say we go and have some...
Cereal soup?
Nah, I was thinking more like soupy cereal.
Catch
Catch you later, moderator.
Yeah, okay. Bye, Chucky. See you, Chucky. Bye, Charlie.
Arrivederci! That means goodbye!
In Italian. Die. I like Chef Boyardee too, you know. Sheesh.
Oh.
Bye, you two. And so, we have 4 ideas laid out for us. The first one is, don't assume bad intention. The next one, ask questions. The third one, stay calm. And the 4th, make the argument. And so, in an awkward segue, I'm going to squiggle out from behind these curtains and go and sit down, move the camera, and then we'll continue with our community conversation. I'll see you in just a moment. Great. All right. Thanks all of you for joining us this evening. We're really excited to see you. And I'm just going to outline the next, let's say 45 minutes to an hour perhaps, or a half hour. We'll see how it goes. After all, this is our first kick at the can. Oops, my bow tie. I'm looking at the camera and it's backwards. And so I'm flipping around like a whirligig. So what I'm going to do is introduce these community members from Red Deer. And they're going to each have, let's say, 5 minutes to open up the conversation, respond to what they heard and learned today. Hopefully they heard it and learned something. And then we'll open it up to conversations. So for example, if you who are listening want to comment, ask a question, throw it out, then it'll come up, I'm hoping, somehow on my screen. I'm not quite sure how that works, but we'll pretend something's going on and we'll get into a conversation. So first of all, I would like to introduce our first guest, if you will, and his name is Jock Mckenzie. And he was from Red Deer and grew up here, and he was an instructor with the Red Deer public school system for 30 years or more until he retired. And he really thinks in his retirement that he thinks it's time for people to step up and step forward and be involved in the community. He's been doing some writing and doing some volunteering. And so I'm going to throw it over to you, Jock, and you can have the floor.
Hi, Matt. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if we're on speaker view or gallery view or whatever, but I'm just going to rock and roll here, okay? You can hear me fine?
That's good.
Awesome. Okay. Well, the three of
us.
Jock,
if I could ask you, sorry, I'm cutting in and I forgot to ask you the question. Which of these four ideas that you heard presented seem to have struck you the most? For good, for bad, if it's easy, if it's hard? Maybe you can spend a few minutes discussing that.
That's my plan. We were asked to choose one of the four questions, and I chose make the argument. It appears to me that this topic of the not so great divide can be looked at a couple of ways. And I think that Green Day had a song a couple of years ago that was, "We live in troubled times." And I think we are living in troubled times. And in some ways you might say, well, that's not so great. It's not so great that we have this divide. I don't think that's what the intention of the topic tonight was. You're saying, hey, we are divided. And the puppets showed, Charlie and Chucky showed that they say, hey, we can get over these things. It's not insurmountable. And I agree that it's not insurmountable, but I don't think you, Matt, or the other members of the public would have come together tonight if we weren't facing a problem. I think that in many cases, pandemic aside, that we are in very troubled times. And what I am going to say to make my argument is that I think that, as you said, we need to step up and step in and get involved. I'm going to use a number of old sayings, maxims, aphorisms that will kind of lead me through 3 or 4 main points that I'd like to make. And one of them is crisis sparks opportunity. I think we're in a time of crisis. We've got people, I grew up in Red Deer. I was born here in 1949. I taught school here for 31 years. I taught middle school, junior high, elementary school, and we have changed over that period of time. My bride is from Ponoka, just half an hour north of here. It was an entirely different town than Red Deer. Red Deer was just, sort of everybody was the same. We had one Chinese kid in my group of friends. Everybody else was like me, just a white guy. The only thing that makes me different is I'm left-handed. And that's not much of a difference. But we now have just a wonderful array of people who are from around the world. We have people that are, as you said in the play, we've got gay people, we've got people that are of different religions, we've got people of many different opinions. And I think we have to learn how to get together. And in order to get together, we need to do a number of things. So let me say that my second little adage is there are 3 kinds of people. There are people that make things happen. There are people that watch things happen. And there are people that sit back and wonder, what happened? I think we need to be a little bit more of the first kind. We need to be the kind of people that make things happen. Things aren't just rolling along smoothly, all good, all fine, Alberta sunshine and blue sky, there are some problems that we need to address. And I think for me, the way to address those kinds of problems is with small steps. I don't have this great, huge plan that I'm going to go out and change the world. I just do my little thing in my time, in my way, and I hope that it makes a difference. And that if I start with talking to my wife, I refer to her as my bride. She likes that. If I speak to her more often and share my thoughts and ask her her thoughts, and then I also talk to members of my family, and I also talk to my friendship group, and I don't talk about the weather, and I don't talk about all of the COVID-y things that are driving us crazy, and I don't try to talk about things that are negative. I try to put on the happy face and be a positive guy. But you have to start small and start stepping a little bit outside your comfort zone. I've thought of suggesting to the Chamber of Commerce that they have little pins that they give Red Deerians that say, "I'm from Red Deer." Because when I look at people as I walk into the City Roast or Sweet Capone's, or I'm on the streets or out and about, not as much anymore, but at least it would let other people from not Red Deer be able to say, well, where do you find this? Or how do you do that? Or open the conversation so that, you know, we're connecting. And I don't think that enough of us connect outside our zone.
All right, so if I may, maybe one of the things you're potentially thinking is that these steps that we start to talk about, where you're saying, how do you find something here or there? These little tiny steps start to break down things that might appear as barriers and build some trust. I think that's an excellent idea. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So
thank you.
We're going to move next on to Marilyn Mann. And Marilyn, you are a Central Alberta gal yourself, and you taught for 30 years in the at Sylvan Lake, apparently. And my understanding is that you think that international travel has been very helpful for you to kind of open the world up, share ideas. So maybe you can go back to that first question I had, which was, which of those 4 ideas that we presented, that Charlie and Chucky and I presented, struck you the most in whatever way you want to?
Okay, thank you, Matt. Well, first of all, I'd just like to say that I have always considered myself to be an upbeat person, someone who sees the best in people, and someone who lives looking at a positive perspective with the glass half full. So it was very surprising to me when I looked at the 4 points. The one that struck me the most was don't assume bad intent. Because like I said, I like to see the best in people. But that's the one that definitely resonated with me. So as Jock said, we live in a much different world right now. I was born in 1959 in Innisfail and have been in Red Deer for most of my life, teaching in Sylvan Lake. And I've seen great, great changes, as I'm sure the audience has as well. One of the things that I have come to realize as an adult is that we all have very strong opinions about what we think is right and wrong, and what we think is accurate and what is false. And it's very, very easy to look at other people's perceptions from our eyepiece and to think that maybe people just don't get it. So in that comes a judgment. So behind our front door, we have a mirror that I look at most days that says, let me see, observation is power and judgment is weakness. So the thing is to observe people and don't make a judgment about them. But I have found that in recent times to be a little bit difficult to do. And I have become cynical in some ways, and I really have to work with myself all the time to avoid being that way. So I just recently had a real life experience where I was at a meeting, and there was a topic that was brought up that was a hot button topic. And there was a person in the meeting who had a different opinion than I did. And that person reacted just like Chucky did, with redness and anger and aggression. And the whole body language just, it was very, very uncomfortable for me because I don't like confrontation. And the whole time I was thinking, you know, I'm not so sure what their intent is with this. I just don't quite get it. And then the big lesson was, you know, this person has very strong views, and maybe I just need to sit back and understand and listen to that. So when I was teaching school, I would always show a little video to my kids about Uncle Al as a way of problem solving. And as I was watching Charlie and Chucky, I realized that really that's exactly what was happening. So AL is an acronym for agree, listen, and solve. So I think that through our not assuming bad intent, we have to agree that there is a problem or a conflict, and we have to agree to solve it. And then what we really need to do is listen. And listening is an art. How many times when we're talking or listening to somebody, the whole time we're listening, we're coming up with a narrative of what we can say to defend our position. So how often are we just waiting to get our word in there because we all want to be heard? So this whole thing about not assuming bad intent, I think really has a lot of parts to it. And we have to respect other people. We have to look at them and understand that they too are people. There's a thing that I've heard about lately called affective polarization. And affective polarization is a phenomena of animosity and contempt between opposing views. And it often embodies tension between ideologies and also partisan identification. So I think we need to be aware of that, because that's not where we want to go. We need to listen. We have to assume that people are good and that we are all in very many ways alike. We all want to be respected. We want to be loved. We want our families to be fine. We want to contribute. We want to be heard, and we want to be understood. And that is one of the things that global travel has shown me, that no matter where I've been, we're all alike, which is really a pretty cool thing. So I think that pretty much sums up where I'm coming from. So thank you, Matt.
Great. That's fantastic, Marilyn. We'll get back to a few points. If you've seen my head sort of nodding down, I've been making some notes here, but we're going to move to our last community member. We'll go to Maya Danielson. And I've known Maya for many, many years, from when she was a small little human. And she graduated, grew up in Red Deer, and went to school here and was working with me in Treehouse Youth Theatre and another project that we were involved in. She moved to Toronto to go to Humber College and got her degree in music. And she's now kind of kicking it here in Red Deer. So Maya, can I turn it over to you now?
Hi, thanks, Matt. Oh, terrible time for my internet to say it's unstable. Are you hearing me okay?
I am, yep.
Okay, perfect. So the point that I have been pondering since watching the video with Megan was number 2, ask questions. And in particular, kind of a sub point that she added, and that is that humans mirror what they're given. This has been something I have been finding very difficult in my own journey recently. So once you come to the person with what Marilyn was just discussing, without assuming ill intent and without projecting your own judgments and assumptions about this person, the task is like, the next step is to like keep your heart and your mind open and ask them questions. And then beyond that, listen carefully to their responses and consider their responses carefully. That has been blowing my mind with how difficult I find it sometimes. I feel like oftentimes when we feel very strongly about a point, like Marilyn was also mentioning, it can be, well, really triggering of our egos to hear that someone is in opposition to that. And I feel like as soon as an ego enters into it and defensive claws come out, it's very difficult to receive anything but defensive claws type of responses, you know? And so it immediately made me think of this life-changing podcast I was listening to this past summer with a brilliant psychologist and author named Harriet Lerner. And she was talking about the power and the immense difference that is made when you approach a conversation with the goal to understand versus to be understood. And my whole foundation just shook, and so much, it felt like it was crumbling, because I thought back to so many conversations where my only goal, or my primary goal, was to be understood. As soon as you hear how good my point is and how right I am, then you'll know. And then maybe I'll consider listening to your points carefully and considering your points carefully. And so when Megan was speaking about this, it really struck me and reminded me of this excruciating, life-changing lesson that I had been given kind of recently. And I feel like it's completely changed many of my relationships and how I approach conversations. Certainly, it's something I need to practice all the time, but I think it's a really powerful thing to hold in your heart and in your awareness when you're approaching a conversation outside your echo chamber of friends and loved ones who agree with you without much effort, you know. And so I feel like this ask questions and thoughtfully consider the responses, and try to put your ego aside enough to be able to potentially change your mind given new information. I feel like I read something recently about normalize changing your mind once you've been given new information. And I think that can be an excruciating one for a lot of people. But it's so important when having these conversations that I feel are coming up today in COVID, in all the social movement that's happening. Yeah, I guess that's it for me for now.
No, those are great points. Thanks, Maya. Thanks, Jock. Thank Marilyn. Yeah, so we seem to be getting into some kind of points. And one question that came up when Marilyn was speaking, and I think it goes to Jock and Maya as well, is the idea of detachment and separating ourselves from that integral belief kind of thing that takes over. But I'm also wondering about how it works when Marilyn, I think, was talking about, I'm just going to look at my notes for a second, sort of agreeing. And one of the questions that I have for the three of you, and maybe we'll just go through and have a quick answer on it, is the idea of agreeing on what the problem is, because is that sometimes one of the questions that we have? Because I might say, well, the problem is my bow tie is crooked, and you can say the problem is your bow tie is like butt ugly, and I'll say, okay, we actually have two different problems. So if we aren't even agreeing in a sense on that initial terminology, how might we get at it, and how might we use these four, let's say, pillars, if you will, that Megan has given us? So let's go back to Jock, and if you can unmute your mic, we'll have a quick start with you, and then go to Marilyn and Maya. We'll kind of keep that order. So Jock, if you'd go ahead.
If I understand your question correctly, it's when you are in a conversation or a situation with another party, And it isn't, you don't understand what you don't understand. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, in a sense, because if we're coming at things from very opposite places, I may not even see what you see as a problem.
Okay. In preparing for tonight, I was thinking of things, and I think one of the quotes that I end my emails with is a quote from Robbie Burns. And it goes something like, "Oh, to power the gifty give us to see ourselves as others see us. I see myself as being open, as being optimistic, as being giving, as being understanding." And I'm sure that there are other people who go like, not, you're not like that. You don't get me because you have never been me. You haven't been a woman. You've never given birth. You've never been out on the street. You've never been driving truck from here to the coast and understand what a drag that can be. And you've never had somebody try to take your job away, and you've never been hungry. So I can't understand some of what other people have gone through. I would like to. I think I'm an open book, but somehow or other, you have to be able to say to people, I think early in conversations, I would love to be able to be bold enough to walk up to somebody and just say, hey man, tell me your story. Talk to me, because I want to learn more about the human condition. There's the thought.
Right. Well, and I'm just thinking of a book that I read in college, and I think the title of the book is "You Cannot Experience My Experience." So in other words, as you're saying, we can't live someone else's lived experience. And so maybe one of the disconnects is the fact that someone comes to me screaming about whatever it is for them, and I might push back, but where I might be failing is the fact that I'm not taking into account that their experience is completely different. And then I've turned off my empathy button, if you will, to try to open up to them and hear what they're saying and hear what that experience is. So I'm already beginning to, as Mai was saying, trying to get someone to understand my position versus really opening up and hearing from them. Marilyn, what do you think about this idea of finding that agreement on what the problem is, for example? You just have to unmute your mic by pushing a certain, there we go. Wait, nope.
There.
There you are.
I thought I had hit it. So I was making some notes while Jock was talking, and while you were, Matt, as well. And I'm thinking one of the big things is that we have to be empathic. And one of the first realizations is as Jock was talking about, you have to realize that different people have had different experiences. Their ideologies might be based on what they were raised in or what life have shown them. We've all got different perceptions. So I think the first thing we need to do is be empathic about that, and which is not an easy thing to do. So it's asking those questions to just determine where people are coming from. So I've had quite an interesting experience in the last few months in that I belong to a group that has been discussing some of the major issues in this area. And I decided that I would talk to people who had completely different beliefs and perceptions than I did. And because I just really wanted to get an understanding of where they were coming from, because so many of these people were, I would say, intelligent, some of them community leaders, some folks just worker bees. And it was very interesting just to understand where they were coming from. And I think that's probably one of the first things. And once you've kind of determined that and you have a relationship built, and relationship is number one always. So once you can build a relationship, even with people who have different views than you do, then perhaps you can talk to them about, can we come to terms with this, and either decide to agree to disagree, or to agree to realize that we do have a difference in opinion, and we need to talk about it and see if we can come to terms with it. So part of the Uncle Al thing I was talking about earlier, it's agree, listen, and solve. I forgot that part. So there you go. I'm going to mute myself again.
Okay. Maya, what do you think about this idea of trying to find this place where you might even need to agree on what the issue is?
I feel like in a conversation that two people are feeling very strongly about it, I feel like there's this really insidious, pervasive idea that enters into a lot of people's thinking and hearts, and that is like division. Like, you are separate from me, we believe different things, we are different, we are parts of different political affiliations, we are different colors, we are different identities, sexualities, we are divided. And I feel like I've been returning back to this with so many like global conversations and local conversations and experiences with people. And I think that when it comes down to it, if you can zoom out your perspective enough in the moment and maybe get out of, well, speaking personally, get away from the emotional or defensive response that might build that barrier higher, and realize that like this person is coming to you as a human person that has had experiences and has thoughts and feelings that are coming from these experiences. And so if you bring them only defensiveness and judgment and ego-driven responses, you can't expect them to bring you anything else but what you're bringing. So I think it's really important to bring to the table the willingness and openness to hearing what this issue sounds like through the eyes of another person, and trying to expand your own understanding from that, instead of trying to push maybe your own agenda and try to, you know, teach or make someone understand your own agenda and your view of what the issue you're discussing is. I think there's a lot of value in trying to understand what their perspective of the problem or whatever is.
So it's kind of like, thanks, Maya. It's kind of like maybe standing down in your own echo chamber and sort of chilling a little bit. But as you were speaking, I began to think also of maybe, without getting into the subject per se, but let's say that one side of the fence is saying there's no climate crisis, and the other side of the fence is saying, guess what? There's a climate crisis. Do you find you're in a situation where you're throwing around facts and figures, and each of you is finding your own little studies in your own little pockets? How might you, each of you, for example, take one of these ideas or all these ideas that Megan has thrown out to us and say, okay, you're standing now right in front of someone who's maybe even screaming at you that the whole thing is a hoax, and you're saying, well, I actually believe that it's not a hoax, this damn bow tie, and I don't believe it is a hoax. So what kinds of things now, as you're filtering through, might each of you approach, and how might you approach it? And I'm wondering, I guess I'll just speak for another second. Can you fly way above it and start by saying, can we agree that there's a challenge on the planet, that species are dying, that things are changing? Can we be that high up? We don't have to talk about solutions yet, but we go back to that idea of identifying, I guess, the issue. So let's go back to that. You're standing in front of someone. We'll do a bit of quick role playing. There you are in front of someone whose idea on climate change, for example, is diametrically opposed to where you're at with it. And how might you begin to approach this kind of conversation with these tools that we've started to present and develop? So let's go to Marilyn first, and then we'll go to Jock, and then we'll go to Maya again. Is that all right? Good. All right.
Okay, thanks, Matt.
Okay, Marilyn, you go ahead.
So as you were discussing that, I was thinking, maybe in my late cynical feelings, that perhaps I would do an inward eye roll and just go, oh, brother. But I'm wondering if a different way of approaching it would be just to take a deep breath and ask the person why they believe this, because I would really like to know. And to get them talking and, pardon me?
No, sorry. It's like
So-
you're kind of getting that calm because you know you were hitting an emotional button right away, and then moving into the asking of the questions. So I think those are really great ways in. So I kind of cut you off, and with this medium, it's a bit of a time lapse sort of delay, you know?
Right. So yes, I think I would try to take a deep breath, because if it's a hot button issue, you're immediately perhaps thinking this person is an idiot. They just don't get it. And which is not where you want to be. And so to ask them the questions and really stop thinking about what you're going to say next, but just ask them why they're coming from that perspective. I had a recent experience like that not too long ago, where I just consciously decided not to try to defend my position. And so I just kept asking leading questions. And through the leading questions, I certainly got a lot more conversation happening. Certainly conversation I didn't agree with, but I tried to listen and to sum up what they were saying afterwards, which led to more conversation because they felt like they weren't being, they didn't have to be on the defensive. And through that whole process, we talked more, the person calmed down, and then I was able to present my perception and perspective. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that's what I would do.
No, that's excellent. And actually your last comment brought up something that I'd read, that asking a question is not the same as putting someone on the defensive, because if you're just asking a question, why do you believe such and such? And your eyes are open and your eyebrows are raised and you're kind of not being aggressive, then people can begin to respond. So the asking of a question doesn't mean you're doubting what they're saying or you're being aggressive. Jock, let's hear from you.
Given that situation, if I had somebody that was all over me like spots on a dog, was raising their voice, was wild-eyed, and was, climate change, I think what I would try to do is just smile. Just look at them and smile and say, assuming it was somebody that I knew, Bob, you're a smart guy. There are a lot of things that you know that I don't know. I know a little about a lot of different things, but I'm not a climate change expert. I don't think, from what I've learned, that I agree with you, and go on and, kind of explain where I'm coming from calmly. I love that little, ask some questions. I've been in situations where I have had a bit more of a firm opinion on something, and I would say to that individual, hey, are you open to considering something else, or are you, set, that's it, no way? And if they said, well, no, yeah, okay, sorry, I get a little hot there. No, I guess I could, what do you want? And I'd say, well, I've got some stuff that I could let you read. Or I've got somebody that I know that's even smarter than the two of us, heaven forbid, that knows about that. Would you listen to that person? Oh, yeah, okay. So diffuse the hot button issue of the moment. And what Janet and I often say to somebody, if it isn't like life and death, we'll say, hey, this is a first world problem. There's a whole lot bigger issues out there than this one. So let's just chill a little bit and have another coffee. Let's talk it out.
Right, that's good. Again, it's about not being defensive. And, I've heard a way in which you raise children. And one of the things is if you've got a small child and they're having a temper tantrum, you might say, well, you're really upset about this. and match their voice, and then they'll feel that they're being heard, and you can slowly kind of bring it down. Because I have some family members who use that technique with their children, and the child was getting more and more upset, and the parents would speak in a voice that matched the child's voice. And before long, the child began to just sort of pull it back and then find a way where there was a way for them to speak. I mean, I don't know, you're going to not stand on the street corner going, so you think such and such and such and such, and you're yelling, I don't know, on the front of the street or something. But anyway, thanks, Jock.
Well,
Maya,
there's
let's
one
go
at
to
this
you.
point, and I just would jump in with the fact that Janet will sometimes say to me, now, don't you use your teacher voice on me. And I don't think I use that as a teacher, but how you say, it's not so much what you say, it's how you say it.
Right, of course. Yeah, the inflection, because we're animals and we go for that sound of the voice and we respond to the voice and where it's pitched and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, Maya.
Well, I feel like that point you and everyone has raised of making someone feel heard is immensely important. And I have experienced so many conversations on this topic and many others where we reach an impasse so quickly because neither of us are feeling heard or understood. And so that's been something I've been returning to a lot. And in this case of climate change, I mean, yeah, I feel like if you are going to have a conversation and genuinely engage with someone who's on the opposite side of an argument like climate change, there's a lot coming into that they're bringing. You know, if they don't believe in something like climate change or disagree with something like climate change, there's a lot that they're bringing. And I feel like it's paramount to understand where they're coming from, why they hold this belief, what is the reason they're continuing to hold this belief exactly the way they've held it in, you know, for their lives. And I feel like allowing them the space to be heard and understood is the only way that you're gonna find any movement in a conversation like that. Yeah. Is that?
Well, it sounds to me, thanks for that. It sounds to me like the three of you are saying, look, I'd like to dig a little bit more. I'd like to kind of find a way to scratch the surface and go beyond our posturing and our chests out and yelling and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if any of you have read the book called The Believing Brain. Oh, Marilyn, yep.
Thanks, Matt. Sorry for interrupting. One of the things that I would encourage people to watch is a Netflix video called The Social Dilemma. And one of the things it explains is how we are provided with information that we are interested in. And so there are algorithms that come up that prove that we go to a certain point over and over again. And then that is why we're provided with that information. So there's an old expression about we see what we look for or what we focus on. And so we do that as individuals, but we are also supplied with information on the social media that supports our views. And so I think we have to just be aware of that. You know, so someone who has an opinion that is completely opposite to what we're feeling may be getting information that substantiates that. So just wanted to toss that in there.
No, that's right. That's right. I know that this echo chamber that we have through social media, whenever I'm going onto a website and I'm hit something and I'm looking at that, then Facebook or someone else will suggest that I go to that website, or this is an interesting place, and you find yourself in this echo chamber. But I was saying just a moment ago, asking if someone had read you want to go now, Maya?
Oh, I was just saying, I feel like the echo chamber has brought an end or like really hindered discourse in our lives by a lot. These algorithms that are designed to our exact wants. We want to see this kind of information. We want to see these articles popping up, substantiating the beliefs we already have. And all our friends believe the same thing. And I feel like I am fresh out of an echo chamber. I feel coming back to Alberta from Toronto recently. And I think it's so important to be able to develop these skills of actual engaged discourse, you know? But please go on with the...
Yeah, no, it's a real challenge. So I'll get this thing in about the believing brain. I don't know if any of you have read it, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the author's name, and I should have done a bit more research, but it just popped into my head as you were talking, because we're talking about these different positions and coming from different places. And apparently 40%, so the world apparently only falls into two camps, the progressive and the conservative. And this is historical and evolutionary, and it came forever and ever and ever and exists in us. And apparently 40% of where we'll lean, not necessarily politically, but whatever, to the left or to the right, 40% of that comes from our genetic makeup. And one of the reasons that we need, for example, to have conservative people is that the conservative people are very, very concerned with safety and the community being whole and keeping the family safe and everybody together. And we need the progressive side, because the progressive side, they were the people that said, hey, let's go over that hill and see what's on the other side. Or what happens if we put this log in the river and we go across that river? Oh, Michael Shermer. Thanks, Marilyn. She's done her research, and it's Michael Shermer that wrote the book, The Believing Brain. So we've got these kinds of issues, and I do try to remember it when I'm speaking with someone that I might be challenged by, and sort of say, okay, we need both sides of these humans. We need to stay safe. We need to protect ourselves and watch ourselves. But guess what? We also have to explore. We have to change. We have to push boundaries, and we have to, mix it up a little bit. So we're getting close to 7:30, and I'm thinking that it might not be a bad idea. Oh yeah, it is a gray world, Jock. Thanks. I'm sort of getting these little flash ups at the bottom of the screen. I don't know if we have some other humans who are watching, if there's another single person out there, if the four of us are just, banging the drum, whatever it is. Anyway, so why don't we just say that we'll go in the reverse order this time. So we'll start with Maya, then we'll go to Marilyn, and we'll end with Jock. Why don't you give us kind of a final thought and statement about this idea, sort of a bit of a takeaway for us before we wrap up. How's that? So Maya, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, yeah. I feel like a big takeaway for me watching this video and having this conversation and these conversations is if my goal in a conversation, if my desire is to be heard and to be understood, I need to bring that to the plate, to have a shred of a hope of being heard and understood. I need to attempt to hear, deeply listen, and consider and understand what the person I'm speaking to is saying. Yeah, I feel like that's my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, fantastic. So again, kind of hearing and really hearing and putting yourself aside in a sense, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, Marilyn.
So the Great Divide. So that's what we seem to be seeing more and more in our society, in our province, in our country, in our world right now. And I think there are many people who don't want to see that divide. And I believe that if we just listen, if we just ask, if we just treat people with respect and lead by example is really important. So life is a great big mirror. And so you often get back what you put out. And so I think we have to be not responsible for other people's statements, but we have to be responsible for ourselves. We have to be responsible for what our reactions are. We have to be responsible to how we perceive things. So I think it really, first of all, begins with us, but I also believe in people, and I think that we can close that great divide.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, thank you very much, Marilyn. Jock.
Well, I'd like to start, Matt, by saying thank you. And I know that I speak for Maya and for Marilyn for getting this show together. And it's a pleasure to be the first of 10. And I will certainly be out there in the listening audience for the other 9, because I know you have themes that are coming up for the next 9 months. To get back to tonight's takeaway for me is that this kind of thing motivates me even more than I have been motivated. And I think that's what I would like other people, those watching, listening, or who check it out later, say to themselves, what is it that will motivate me to do more than what I'm already doing? Because I think we can all do so much more than we're already doing. Make it say, I mean, what are we here for? You know, I'm an old retired guy, so I've got a little less on my plate. I had the joy of visiting with my grandkids very briefly because of COVID. Couldn't even hug my little granddaughter. But it's a great big world out there, and I want it to be good for them. And I want it to be good for me for as long as I'm going to be kicking around here. And I want it to be good for everybody for all of the reasons that there are. So starting a meaningful conversation is a very important thing. Thank you.
No, and thank you, 3. This is very touching to sort of get that sense of really wanting to connect and find a way to be with someone and actually really be with them. And especially now, of course, here we are taking advantage of all this technology, and we're nowhere near each other, except I feel that we're quite near. This feels like a lovely, intimate conversation we've had, and I've like super enjoyed it, my stumbling and fumbling aside. So I want to thank Jock, Mckenzie, Maya, Danielson, and Marilyn Mann for stepping up to the plate. And as Jock was saying, for example, we do have 9 more monthly community conversations. We'd like to have anybody who's watching right now and in the future who would like to contact the library and say, boy, I'd love to be on that panel. I'd like to be able to speak. I've got something that I want to say. I feel like I want to engage. This has been such a positive, forward moving kind of experience for me. And it's, you know, to be honest, you've chipped away a bit of my own cynicism. You know, as I look at this really world, I sort of go, wait, yeah, okay, we can actually talk. And I've got some people in my personal circle that we often go like this. And I'm hoping now, using some of, you know, Ms. Roper's ideas and some of your ideas to sort of say, why can't we just chill and find that place where we can connect somehow? So I also want to thank the Friends of the Red Deer Public Library, because they're the ones that have sponsored this program and are helping us with our puppets and making this whole darn thing work. And of course, I wouldn't be anywhere if I didn't thank all of the members of the Red Deer Puppetry Collective, both here and not here. Yay! The Red Deer Puppetry Collective, they're hanging around there being very quiet while we're going through all this talk. Yum, yum. So I want to thank Suzanne Hermery, Dan Vasquez, Ash Mercier, Carol Nault, Brian MacArthur, Ranjit Mulakady, and I guess I'll even thank myself. Oh, thank you. Yay! I'm going to thank myself. So I just want to say again, thank you. And the next conversation, which takes place on, I think, the 8th of December, same time, same channel, is going to be about sweet charity. So we'll be looking at giving, volunteering, something that Jock was sort of talking about. How do we make it have meaning in our lives, and how does that kind of sit? So once again, for the Red Deer Public Library, for the Red Deer Puppetry Collective, For Marilyn, Jock, and Maya, I want to say thanks.